Hello everyone and welcome back to Backlog Banter. My name is Tucker Hazell and this is Dev Dive, a show where I get a chance to talk to interesting game developers about their games, and today I am joined by both of the minds behind the new game Time Flies, a very unique game that we're going to get into all the design history and philosophy and everything behind. This is Raphael Munoz and Michael Frei to talk about Time Flies. You guys have been working on this game for a while and it's finally coming to the world, and I'm really excited to kind of get the inside scoop on what went into making this game. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to make sure that people know a little bit about you guys before we start to dive into Time Flies. And so, Raphael, let's start with you and what your history with games is. How long you've been working on games, maybe give us a sense of some of the projects you've worked on before, and what's your sort of passion in the games industry?
I like games and I've been playing games since I was very little. But that's actually quite recent that I work on games, like these kind of games that you release on platforms and stuff. I worked more in the art space before that, like in art installations, interactive installation, some VR, some AR stuff. And I also worked on some smallish games for museums. And thanks to Michael, I had the chance to actually work on kind of a real game.
Yeah.
For once.
Whatever that means, quote unquote.
Whatever that means, yes.
Yeah. And Michael, what about you? What's your history with games?
Well, I was never really allowed to play many games. Both of my parents are teachers, so there was tight restrictions on my game consumption as a child. So yeah, I was also never super interested in them. I think I was able to play some games at my friend's house. I was very interested in the internet when I was a teenager.
Sure.
I always wanted to know how to make websites and stuff like that. And dabbled around in animation, pretty much like that. And eventually I studied animation.
Yeah.
Started to make films relatively successfully, and I was always interested in how to best present my works online, and that's when I became interested in making like animation that is interactive, which again kind of I moved into the more the game corner maybe of things. So my previous interactive works were usually somehow links to an animation film project that I made.
Yeah.
And this one, Time Flies, is the first that I really just tried to develop as a game from the start.
Interesting. Yeah. It's definitely very different. And I've been familiar with you guys' work for a while. I've played both Plug and Play and Kids, and I've been sort of following Playables, the group that you guys are both associated with, for a while. And you guys do stuff that's totally different from what anyone else is doing. So I also want you to give a sense and kind of just explain what you see Playables is, like, as a very non-traditional game studio group, lots of different creatives collaborating on things, and what makes it unique as a different kind of creative force in the industry. Raphael, you mentioned you coming from the art world. Michael, you mentioned you actually weren't super interested in games. So I think it's kind of these different backgrounds that fuse to make Playables as a group that is unlike other game studios.
Yeah, I think what is unique about our studio that now almost turned into also a publisher label, I don't know what you want to call it, is that we work with people that don't really have a game background. So it's people from illustration or often from the animation world. That's also where I kind of grew up in, this independent animation scene internationally. So we didn't really have a master plan.
Yeah, of course.
I feel there might be some confusion because I'm not directly part of Playables.
Sure.
We happened to work together on that project on Time Flies because I helped a little bit on Kids.
Mm-hmm.
But the one actually programming the games in Playables is Mario von Rickenbach. So we're not the same person. So
yes, I know.
It's kind of confusing.
Yeah, but you're definitely associated with the group. You know, your style, their style. You've been involved in the games. That's kind of more of what I was thinking. Because again, as you mentioned, Michael, Playables is it is you guys programming these games, doing interesting web animation projects, helping publish other people's games. Like, this is an interesting web, and Raphael, you're obviously a part of that, and so that's mostly what I meant.
Mhm.
Time Flies, as you mentioned, Michael, is different from the project you've worked on in the past. And I'm interested in where the idea for Time Flies came from. What was the original idea for Time Flies? And honestly, if you can pinpoint this moment, do you remember like where you were and like what you were thinking about when you came up with the idea that would eventually become Time Flies? That again became something kind of different for you guys.
I mean, I was asked these questions a few times recently, and there was like one moment that I remember, which at the time had nothing to do with the game yet, but somehow all like most of the ingredients of the game were already there. Like, which was during the pandemic. There was a lockdown. I guess it was 2020 still, or 21. I don't remember. And I was bored, and I didn't know really what to do with my life. And I bought a television. It's very unlike me to buy a television, but I didn't know what else to do. And it was delivered to my flat, and I turned it on, and it had a dead pixel.
Ah,
And
interesting.
I was really annoyed by this dead pixel. So much so that I eventually returned the television. And I remember I was really annoyed, being so annoyed by just one pixel, because it's like a 4K TV, so it's like 8 million pixels. And in Switzerland, at the same day in Switzerland, where we are approximately, or we were 8 million, like in population, like I think like about 40 people died of COVID at that day. And I was not as annoyed by the 40 people that died than by that one pixel, and I thought that's off, that's wrong. We had kind of WH data and an annoying pixel already. Yeah, that pixel eventually turned into a fly, and
Yeah.
so that's like the origin story of the origin story, kind of.
No, definitely. Yeah. Well, I'm curious where the moment it jumps from being a interesting sort of introspective thought process of, oh, like my feelings on this and culture and technology and these things, to becoming something that is more of a game. Where does that jump end up happening in the process?
We met for a week to kind of workshop an idea. We wanted to make a project, but that was like for a core for project to do a small thing. We wanted to prototype something. We didn't really know what to do at that time, but Michael came with a few ideas, and he had the idea of the fly because he was working on some fly animations. He had all these ideas in the back of his head. During that week, we kind of put a lot of pieces together. We actually were working during that time on a Playdate game.
Oh, okay.
You know the Playdate from
Yeah, of course.
the console from Panic. And so we were in that pixel art space, black and white.
Yeah.
So that's also kind of where the aesthetic came from. There are also other interesting origins for the art style that Michael can talk about. But we actually put all these things together during 1 week. And at the end of that week, we kind of had an idea of what we wanted to do as a prototype. And that was like the first area, the living room of Time Flies.
Yeah. I mean, I think it'd be interesting to dig into that visual style first and foremost, because you brought it up. The pixel art of Time Flies also helps set it apart from the previous projects you've worked on. You know, if you look at something like Plug and Play or Kids, is using this more smooth, hand-drawn, I don't know if vector is the right word, but vector art style, where you can't see the individual pixels. But this is very chunky pixel art, and I think it looks very cool, and it maintains that monochrome art style that you've done in previous works. But why did you go with pixel art as opposed to that more hand-drawn art style? And was there ever sort of an experimentation with making this not pixel art, or was it pixel art from the very start?
It was pixel art from the very start. One thing was that we were working on this kind of Playdate prototype for a completely different project, so there was already kind of I was dabbling around with that. And but what I really liked about working in this resolution is that the main character is just reduced to a pixel, basically, most of the
Yeah, yeah.
time. So this I found quite interesting because from a conceptual perspective, my project were always very character focused. I mean, they usually don't have had any backgrounds, the projects. It was all about the relationships between the characters moving on the screen. And I thought it would be interesting to switch that around. So the character is kind of like meaningless and empty almost, and we have to create the world, and the world becomes kind of the character. And that was something that I have never done before. And I like to try the things. I don't know how they work. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, that definitely makes sense as kind of an inversion of your previous projects. Because Time Flies is a lot more complex. It is more layers, more explorable. There's a variety of objectives that you can complete in any order that you want to. There's multiple levels and areas, and there's even secrets. And that again sets it apart. And I'm curious what kind of things that the two of you might have wanted to explore or experiment with on a design level that you maybe hadn't gotten to in the previous, maybe more artsy projects that you've done before. This is more traditionally gamey, and I don't necessarily mean that in a positive or negative way, but just as a difference between your previous projects. So, what kind of things were you looking for when you were like, let's make this something that's a little bit more, a little bit bigger in scope, a little bit more complex?
I mean, it was clear that the fun of the game is the exploration. So it's very different the way it works, I guess. And also the way you could scale it would be very different than the previous project. What I was interested in was to do something that you could control also with a game controller or with a keyboard. Like usually all my previous projects were touch first, so it was all designed for touch input, and you could also play with the mouse, of course, but not with a controller. So that was interesting to me. And we also used some kind of game tropes, I guess. So like we use a countdown, we use the levels, we use like the respawn ability, like the respawn of the character, like this kind of game loop that repeats. So yeah, that was I think intentionally we made it more gamey than previous projects I've been working on that are more like linear experience you might just play once.
Yeah. Yeah. And Raphael, what about you from the programming side? What sort of challenges did you face doing a very different kind of more expansive project like this? And were there things you were kind of excited to explore or challenge yourself with making a game with a bigger scope?
Yeah, that was definitely a challenge for me. I guess when you work in the art field, you don't go too far into polishing the things. If there's something that doesn't really work, you kind of find your way around. Here, you really have to make everything work. So that's a different experience. Also, you need to be more like the code needs to be a bit more tidy. Things need to be controlled at every point. So that was very interesting for me to change kind of that in my work, like to be more focused on making things work, avoid bugs and stuff. And so it was a challenge because we changed a lot the architecture of the game. That's also maybe one of the reasons it took a while to do. There was the difficulty to have a bigger scope than what we had at the beginning, because when we had just like kind of one level, it was working so well that it was very hard to know, okay, well, what do we do from now?
Yeah.
So we thought about making it completely open world, and then that didn't really work as well as we wanted. So that's also why we went back to more traditional level by level. So these also were challenges in how the architecture works, because I knew that things were changing, so I had to kind of make plans for the system to still hold while we were changing these like fundamental pieces. Then also I liked working on the pixel art because we work in Unity, where you traditionally work in 3D, and so here we had like the 2D using all the 2D engine stuff, and working with pixel art was sometimes a challenge. Also because of the art style, the way Michael worked in visually, so that everything you can understand all the time what is in front, what is behind, how things interact. Like we have a lot of fake depths in the levels, and all these things we needed to like find very subtle ways to keep the world like readable. So that was the main thing, and that was very interesting to do. So
Yeah, and Michael, for you as the animator of these previous projects, and of course on this one as well, how did this different kind of game, but either from working in pixel art or from just having this larger scope, how did it impact your like creative process of like doing the animations and stuff? Was it markedly different? You have to challenge yourself in any way?
I think like my previous projects usually work with very few design elements, and then the kind of the exercise was usually to make something interesting with as few elements as possible. And here it was kind of the opposite. So it's like coming up with as many ideas as possible and then boiling them down to what works. And it's like we designed like I don't know, a few dozens like totally different interactions you can do with a fly, and the challenge was to kind of design the space so it would stay interesting for the duration of the game. I think it's kind of a game you can play in one session, so it's not super long.
Yeah, my total play clock was probably a little under 2.5 hours.
Okay.
I don't know how that compares to other people, but that's how long it took me.
Yeah, I mean, before we started testing, I thought like, yeah, people will probably have like an hour or 90 minutes or something, but I think that's a little bit too optimistic. I think it takes a little longer, that's true.
Well, what's interesting about the game on an experience level, and maybe where this disconnect from you guys to the players comes in, is it's really about the exploration loop. Is you have limited time to explore the space and figure out what these bucket list items mean, because they're a little bit vague, they're a little bit jokey. You don't know exactly what they're going to correspond to. You also don't know exactly what you can interact with. So you just spend your time, the limited time you have, testing, can I interact with this? No, okay, move on to the next thing, kind of cross that off your list. And I found myself just trying to go into every nook and cranny and like really spending my time in many lives. I think I was somewhere around like almost 50 flies by the end of my playtime. Just trying everything. And of course, you guys as the creators, you know exactly where you need to go and what
of course,
what you can do and can't do. But on a player side, I have no idea. So I just got to go through every little thing to figure out what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, for sure. Like the process, I think for me was very difficult also because all my previous games have been short. Like it usually took like, maybe 20 minutes to play them or even less. Much easier to control that experience, I guess, than something that takes like 90 minutes. I like to compare it like to making a short film to making a feature film.
Yeah. No, I mean, in terms of length, absolutely.
Yeah, so this is pretty much feature length, and it has to carry you, or it has to carry for that amount of time. So there was also a lot of consideration in making it like kind of having an interesting progression also in the levels. So I mean, the first level is kind of things that you would expect to do maybe as a fly a little bit, and then it gets weirder and weirder with time and a bit more metaphysical. Yeah, I think that was quite interesting and also really hard to do.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I am curious how you guys kind of scoped out the game. As you mentioned, this is many times bigger in terms of playtime, in terms of complexity than your previous projects. And how did you sort of draw the line? Like, this is how many bucket list items we're going to have. This is how many levels we're going to have. Like, why did you decide 4 levels as opposed to 3 or 5 or even less? Like, this would have been much more comparable to your other projects if it had been just that 1 level, but you decided to go farther, but not too far. So, like, how did you choose where to cut and add things to make it what the project ended up being?
I mean, the beginning was really just one area, and that was kind of a self-contained game. And then it became clear that it would be interesting to bring it to consoles. I mean, in the beginning it was just really more thought as a web game or something like that. Sure. We figured that it would make sense to make it about 4 to 5 times as big as the first prototype we had. And I think we also kind of settled for areas to explore. So there was like this idea of having an art gallery, the idea of having kind of a sewage space. There was also like, for the longest time, there was the idea of an airport.
Okay.
So you could fly places with an airplane.
Ah.
And that's one of the areas we totally like kind of erased from the game. There's a little remnant of that idea in the gallery space where you can watch a movie.
Yeah.
About that.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Because it turns out it's really boring to fly somewhere as a fly with an airplane. I mean, flying anywhere with an airplane, I think, is quite boring if it takes longer than an hour or two. I think for the longest time we had 5 levels in mind, and then we cut one, and it felt like it's the right scope for that game. I felt like with the 5th level, it would start to feel a little bit repetitive, and maybe also a bit. It would feel a bit more like a grind, maybe, to go through these levels. And I felt these 4 levels were kind of the sweet spot.
Yeah. So, Raphael, on the programming side, like cutting things, adding things, where were you what was your thought process in making sure that the game was at a proper scope?
I kind of reacted to whatever we were trying to go. I remember that at some point the art gallery was actually a secret area in the first level, the first house. Like you would go to through some pipes and stuff, you would get to the art gallery. And same with the sewer. That was actually thought about. It was supposed to be kind of a transition space between 2 houses, something like that. And then became their own thing. But like these spaces were there first when we were thinking about that open world. We had a map with the starting house and the art gallery in some space, and then pipes going to the sewer, and then arriving to a garage, and eventually to the airport. That was we had like a big map of things, but we couldn't make sense of what the game loop would be in that case, because the game loop with the first level, where you explore first, then you try your best to do everything in one go, that was like the main thing, that was the thing that was working. So at some point we just decided that that's what we needed to keep.
Yeah, I just remember now there was also a car it could drive somewhere at one point. The car is still there now also, but you can't drive anywhere with it.
So it's interesting to hear the ways that the game kind of scoped up before coming back down. And I'm interested to think about what this game would have been, or what you then learned about scoping games when you overextended what your skills would be, when you're like, okay, actually this is not going to work, and that kind of challenging yourself. Do you think that over expansion kind of helped you to appreciate this relatively smaller scope that you ended up ending with?
I think we had like a really well working prototype, and at the time maybe we didn't quite understand why it worked so well, and then we kind of scaled the game up and didn't quite understand how to apply what worked in the first prototype to the rest of it. So like and in the beginning it was just like experimentation. Like we had like a version where you would kind of be like the place you would start every game loop would be kind of random, like you would imagine in real life, like you're just born kind of by accident somewhere, but that felt super frustrating as a player. So I mean that I think was one of the more extreme things we tried before like going back to this kind of more level approach.
And we didn't really actually scale that much. Like it was more about how the space was used, but we didn't cut that much space in the end. It's more like we actually splitted the spaces and like separated them, but we didn't really except for the airport that we completely scrapped. But the rest just kind of grew. So it wasn't really a question of scope, it was more a question of how to handle all the different spaces and where to put them and how you would get from one space to another.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, well, the most quote unquote limiting aspect of this game is that you only have a certain amount of seconds to do anything in the lifespan of a fly. And that is, at face value, I think a really good concept of like, all right, you see the clock ticking down, you are constantly thinking about how much time you have left. When did you implement the sort of lifespan element to this game of like, you've only got for anywhere from 50 to 80 seconds to do anything? There's a little bit of a twist on that in that you can interact with clocks to sort of add a little extra time to your life. But do you remember when you added that to the game loop of just having a very limited amount of time to end up getting anything done before you have to restart?
Yeah, I think that was very early in the process. Like in this first week when we brainstormed, it was kind of clear we had this idea of the fly. We had the idea of doing things in a space as a fly. And I'm not sure if the idea of the bucket list was there before the life expectancy, but that came like hand in hand because I checked on Wikipedia what the lifespan of a fly would be, and that didn't really make any sense. And we had been looking at the World Health Organization data for during the pandemic all the time. So there was this idea to use life expectancy data. Yeah, it was kind of roughly like 60 years or around 60 years. So we just took the years, the human years, but in seconds. Yeah, and it makes sense to having to go through a bucket list in a limited amount of time, because that's the dilemma we all face in life.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And so what you're referencing is that when you start up this game, you first thing you do is choose what country you want your fly to be from. It doesn't really change anything about the maps as far as I know. It doesn't change anything with the goals, but it changes how long you have until your fly kicks the bucket. And it's the data, the amount of time you have to complete your tasks is based on the average life expectancy from the country you choose. And that is a really kind of next level interesting, maybe even like meta social commentary thing about the different lifespans, life expectancies in different countries. And I found that to be really, really compelling to intertwine real life data with a game, which you don't really see happen very often.
Yeah, I think the first thing actually the game does is look up your IP. So it tries to guess where you're from. So that's the country that is selected, or the location that is selected automatically on your first run.
Yeah.
And most people that actually play the game, at least from my testing, what I can tell is they skip that screen rather quickly and don't even look at it
Sure.
that closely.
Yeah.
And after a few runs, they realize that they can change where their life expectancy. So it's kind of they understand that it's a difficulty slider in the game, kind of a difficulty slider in disguise. And yeah, like I quite like this idea of using real world data. So because a countdown would just have felt arbitrary to use.
Sure. Interesting. Yeah. I'm curious if you did testing in terms of the shortest lifespan. I don't know which country has the shortest life expectancy, or that would correlate to the shortest amount of time you have in the game. But did you do any testing to make sure the game was beatable within the limited time span of the lowest life expectancy, or is it like is it not? I don't know. What was your experience like doing the research about that, Raphael? You can speak to that of the life expectancy and the countries, and then also just the game time, making sure that it all fit within that loop.
Yeah, we tested it quite far at the end of the dev process to test the lowest life expectancy and to be sure that the hardest is the last level, and that's the one where we really had to check if all the clocks gave you enough time so that you would be able to beat the level. So it's tight, but you can do it with the lowest life expectancy. But that came when we started QA, because people at QA started to check like what happens when you change the country selection, and if things would change in the game, because we didn't really gave them any instruction about that. So that was interesting to have as a feedback. So that's when we realized, okay, maybe that would be good that we're able to finish the last every level with the lowest life expectancy. So Michael handled most of the level design. So I think he had some kind of way to calculate the time you spent flying between interactions. So we would have like a rough estimate of the time it takes. But if you play with the highest life expectancies, you can finish levels with more than 30 to 40 seconds to spare. So it's not that complicated.
So it is possible to finish it with the shortest life expectancy, but it's really hard.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, and is there any change to the game otherwise if you choose different countries?
Yes.
Is that something that you want to keep secret, or do you want to talk about?
No, it's kind of a secret. It's kind of something people can explore if they want to. But it's kind of it's a tiny joke that is hidden somewhere.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Yeah. Well, that does also bring us to another element of this game that I think I didn't realize before I was going in, is that there are secrets to this. There are interactables that aren't part of the bucket list items that are just kind of fun little things that you can find. There also are things that are a little bit more hidden, which are a couple of puzzle pieces that end up creating, I think there's 12 of them, create a puzzle, which I have not finished. At the time I'm playing, there's no guides or anything anywhere, so I'm doing this all blind. But talk about that hiding of secrets and stuff, and adding interactable things that aren't part of the quote-unquote main quest. What was that process like, of making sure the world felt rich, but also balancing it so that, primarily you're doing the things you have to finish the game?
I think it was to kind of reward exploration a little bit. That was kind of important to us. And for the longest time, it was not actually a puzzle piece, or puzzle pieces. The idea was to have a collection of life motivation quotes to collect, but that felt kind of cheesy. So we we went with the puzzle eventually, and I mean the puzzle interaction itself I think is quite fun. Some people are really disappointed what happens when you collect all the puzzle pieces, but I mean, finishing a puzzle is finishing a puzzle.
Yeah.
There's not much more to it.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, Raphael, what are your thoughts on the secrets and the puzzle pieces and all that?
Yeah, same. I think the need to reward exploration was very strong. The game doesn't tell you anything, so as you said, you need to try to get close to every object to see if you can do something, if you can interact.
Yeah, it's ultimately a game of trial and error.
Yeah, so in that context, it made sense to have some secret, because you're actually looking for, you don't really know what you're looking for, and sometimes you can stumble into something. So the fact that it made sense, the idea pushed itself into the game also to add more of them, and also we added a few things that change when you do them multiple times.
Yeah,
that's also something we added into the game a bit late in the process. I realized that when you finish exploring everything and you know what you want to do, that you couldn't complete some interactions faster. So I kind of implemented that you can, a lot of interactions are actually quicker to finish when you've made them once. So you have these two phases. First you explore, and then you have that kind of speed run feeling of doing things quickly. That's also something that was important to us, and the fact that some interactions actually trigger something different. I don't know if you noticed, for example, with the phone in the last level, every time you have a different sound playing. So there are things that kind of that kind of advance in the world when you start over, and that's also something that we wanted to have to make things more interesting. as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I like that you brought up the idea of speed running this game, which I think will be really interesting once people get their hands on it. Did you do any thinking about like, or really testing about how quickly this game could be beaten? Do you know the fastest time that someone has beaten it? Anything like that?
Well, I make a lot of speed runs when I test the game, I guess.
Yeah, yeah,
It
true.
doesn't take that much time. I don't know, maybe 40 minutes or something. But when I think about the puzzle, another thing that I quite like about that is how it also changes a little bit the rhythm of the game, because it's kind of, you always have this repetition, and when you pick up a puzzle, you're kind of in a different space. And it's something I quite like about it as well.
Yeah, because the game, as you mentioned, gets weirder as it goes on. There are more surreal spaces. There are more interesting interactions that are a little bit more complex. And as we're sort of wrapping up here, I like that you are keeping something secret for people to explore and discover on their own. But I think it'd be interesting to sort of talk about the interactables, about the bucket list items, and talk about some of the ones that were your favorites to work on, ones you felt maybe were most clever, things that were most interesting to program for you, Raphael. What one stick in your mind is like you really feel good that you've got this one working, or that was really clever to implement, something like that?
Which one was your favorite?
Oh, me. The the revisit your past
Okay,
in the
okay.
last level, where where you fly into a very small version of the original level, and then there's a fly in the place where you start. I always liked visiting that, and I also like that you have to pass by the guitars as you pass it. I always just thought that was really really fun.
I mean, my favorite, it was also one of the more complicated ones, is the Find God. We kind of designed that one as a game you would play as a fly that was relatively involved, but then we kind of really scaled it back to the most simple version of a video game, I guess, that you could imagine, or more like a joke than a video game. Did you achieve the win at a video game?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, I did most of the achievements as well.
Okay, cool.
Not all of them, but I did most of them. The one I really am confused the most about is play a triad. I don't really understand how I'm supposed to get three keys to be pressed, so I'm still working on that one.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, but as you were mentioning, there are those bucket list items, but then there are secrets on top of that that are the achievement ones that are things a little more complex or harder to find. And or maybe those some of the ones that you felt most clever kind of implementing or designing.
I mean, I quite like the keyboard. Yeah, for me, the favorite still, I guess, is the video game thing. From a conceptual level, it was kind of interesting to think about, and also pretty hard to figure out something that works. And surprisingly challenging was the rotary phone.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Like, it took a long while until we had like an interaction that didn't feel too fiddly. It was very hard to interact with for a long time, and we had like went through a lot of iterations to get that one right. We didn't have to scrap any idea because it was too complicated, so that was nice. I mean, like the interaction ideas. So we kind of managed to go for the more complex ideas. That was quite rewarding that everything is in now.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. And Raphael, what about you? What are some of your favorite parts of the game that you worked on?
I think the rotary phone, when it finally clicked and it was actually working well, that was a nice feeling because we really worked hard on this one. It was very interesting to work on the keyboard. That was quite a challenge because the way we handle shadows and how all the pieces work, like there's a ton of layers to make everything work. So Michael had to do a lot of drawings and had to create masks for every key. And also there's, I don't know if you found the secret on the piano.
I did, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
you kind of find it by accident, but and also this part where you can actually enter from the side, that was kind of also a challenge in itself to have layers working. That was pretty fun to do. But I think the most fun and easy to implement was the build a house in the art gallery. That's the one where you have dots and you have to connect the dots.
Oh, of course, build a house. Yes.
And it was just great because it was easy to do and it felt good. Also, this one was good, and then we added sound, and then it felt amazing, and I quite like that one.
Yeah. Well, actually, it's interesting you brought that up because I also noticed in the credits that a lot of the sounds in the game are sourced from freesound.org. And I'm curious what that process of is like of using digital foley of sound effects that other people have created, and using this resource that I think is really excellent for developers to be able to not have to go out and create their own sound effects. And you're also making a game that is a little bit weird, is a little bit surreal, and things don't exactly make the sound that you'd expect them to. They're a little more fantastical. And so what was that process like of using this digital resource to pull your sound effects from and be able to create the soundscape of this world?
I think most interactions, they start as a kind of an idea, a sketch, and then usually I make just a mock-up, like by drawing all the necessary parts. So it's really just a little movie that I send to Raphael, give him all the assets, and usually that's the first time when we have sounds implemented. And I've worked with free sounds since I can think. Since I work in animation, that's usually where I kind of just for making draw just sketching the first idea is really useful to just add a sound and see how it feels. And yeah, it's actually a great resource to get assets. But yeah, eventually we had to record some sounds ourselves, things we couldn't find.
Yeah, sure.
And also use some other libraries that are not available for free. The kind of the image is also so reduced that the sound is super important to kind of communicate the physicality of something. So we had the first sound pass that came from this kind of prototyping stage that made its way into the game, and at the end, it was this year still, I think we redid most of the sounds one more. There was a whole sound pass we did, so everything kind of gels together better.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Well, as we wrap up here, I want to ask one last thing about your philosophies on game design, because as you mentioned, you both come from sort of non-traditional backgrounds that bring you to creating games. This is the most traditional game that you've made, and I'm wondering how you feel about what your unique philosophy brings to the industry. You make things that are very different, and what is it that you think makes the games that you make unique as compared to what other people are doing?
I'm not much of a gamer, so, and I feel like a lot of people I know that work in games, they also play a lot of games and are inspired by other games a lot. Not saying I'm not inspired by other games as well, but
I am curious though, then, what within the scope of games that you do play, what kind of games do you like? Which ones do you draw inspiration from?
with this one, with Time Flies, it certainly was the first inspiration was the first video game I've ever played. This was called Glider. It's like an old Mac game where you're in a paper airplane and you kind of fly through rooms, and there are currents in the rooms. It also turned out to be inspiration for some visuals, for the visuals of the game. It's black and white. Low resolution graphics. I play the most horrible games you can imagine. I play FIFA,
That's fine. That doesn't bother me.
Very different to what I would make. I played Minute, which was kind of a time bit, like you also had a countdown and stuff. So I found that quite interesting.
There's also Untitled Goose Game also kind of has the bucket list task kind of thing. I was wondering if there's some sort of touchstone there.
Well, in the beginning, it was not a reference at all. We had this idea of a fly and a list you have to complete, and then when it became about how to handle the UI, we looked at the Goose Game game for sure, like how to show the bucket list and when it would appear fully and sometimes just as a notification, like this kind of stuff.
Yeah. And Raphael, what about you? What do you think about what unique tone and style and philosophy you bring to the games industry? And then you also can explore the kind of games that inspire you.
That's how to say. We were inspired by games like Minute and Dr. Goose Game. Also, I don't play games I would actually develop myself because I mostly play RPGs and MMORPGs. So I wouldn't go into that. But for me, when making the game, what was important is that everything we do actually makes sense. I think that was the main focus. Is that when we have a mechanic into the game, it has to be coherent with what the game is and what the game is kind of about. And like, we really focus on that, and maybe that's kind of what makes the game like. It's kind of like it's silly, but it's also kind of coherent with itself. And also, we didn't want any weird monetization stuff. We didn't want to have too much content that was bad into it. We removed everything that was not good enough. That's also our philosophy is to make it the best we can. And we used the references that made sense. If we have something we're not sure about, we look at how other people are doing it to find what could be the best way to implement that in our game. So I don't know. It's a full process.
I mean, it does, of course, like we're a super small team. It's basically the two of us. We can be quite uncompromising also with ideas. And that maybe is like when I look around me, like other game developers, usually they're bigger teams and they might have a bit more an abstract idea of what the audience wants from them. So it's there are sometimes investors involved and stuff like that. And I think for me, like from the start, just like the most important thing is that it's a game that we are proud of and that we would like to play, I guess. And yeah, we didn't think too much about how the market would react to it or something like that. So just try to do something maybe also a bit risky and uncompromising. Don't be too worried about whether it's going to be a financial success or whatever.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think we've quite thoroughly explored the history and development and creative process behind Time Flies. I'm really grateful to have you both here and kind of talk about this. Again, this has been a game I've been following for a very long time. I have a list of games I'm excited for, indie games I'm excited for. I think it's from 2022 that I've been like thinking about this game and looking forward to it. And so the project is finally here. People are gonna get their hands on it. As the time this goes up, the game will be available. It's on PS5 and Switch and PC. And so lots of different people will be able to try one of your games for the first time. As you mentioned, you haven't put a game on console before. So this is a big step for you. But any closing thoughts before we sign off from either of you?
I hope people like the game and I hope they enjoy a nice waste of time.
Sure. And Raphael, anything from you?
Yeah, I also hope that people are gonna like the game, and maybe if I think like my secret dream is that it could inspire other developers to do things differently. Maybe sometimes the fact that you play as a fly, that's weird. The fact that you can play as a pixel also is weird. Like we have a lot of weird ideas, and I hope that some things like the same way we actually got inspired by other games, that if that game can inspire others, that would be amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, thank you both very much for joining me. Everyone, I hope you learned something about the game. I hope you go play it, of course. Go give them your support. Talk about the game, get people's eyes on it. But thank you very much both for joining me. And for everyone else, I'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.